We, as Margaret's family, and many of you, have been in the unique position of being able to journey with Margaret through her last days with us, and to have her direction and input into this, her memorial celebration service. My name is Vicky Cox, and it is a privilege and a great honour to be the celebrant of Margaret's celebration service. Margaret was my mum. Before we begin, some housekeeping. In the unlikely event of an emergency, please exit by the doors that you entered and congregate outside by the porta comms at the assembly point. The bathrooms are located on the left as you exit, and at the conclusion of Margaret's memorial service today, we'd like to invite you to share cuppa and food with us, and for you to share your memories with us. A massive thank you to City Church, Garden and Carol, Jasmine, who put together most of the technology for today, and Sheena, who was coordinating the food. There will be no interment following the service. There's a private committal that's already taken place following Mum's passing. It is fitting at this moment that we acknowledge and honour those who've gone before Margaret. Her parents, Jim and Martha Dodds, her older sister, Heather. Heather's son, Kevin, has joined us today. Thank you, Kevin. Heather's son, Shane, Margaret's nephew, Lee, who was Uncle Jim and Auntie Elaine's son. Dad's mother, our beautiful grandmother, Isabel Wineman. Julie Tasker, Ian's late wife. Mum's dear friend Judy, who very recently passed. Our love goes to Rick, her husband. Mario, Mum and Dad's neighbour. Our love is extended to Jacqueline at this time. We will now light a candle to honour those who have gone and others dear to us who we have lost. Wish for today was that it would be a celebration of her life and a cheerful farewell as she journeys her way to heaven. She wanted her memorial service to be light-hearted and fun, and also to convey her Christian faith, which underpins who she was. It is my hope, as a last way of honouring Mum, to make sure that today indeed covers all she hoped for. Mum loved this little saying, and it sums up her somewhat irreverent yet heartfelt view on life and death. Life should not be a journey to the grave with the intention of arriving safely in a pretty and well-deserved body, but rather a skid and broadside, Baileys in one hand, strawberries or chocolate in the other, and a cloud of smoke, body thoroughly used up, totally worn out, and loudly proclaiming, "Woohoo, what a ride." Mum's life journey was indeed this, particularly at the end. The positivity and belief in her life beyond the grave with Jesus was an inspiration. Mum, we can just imagine you excitedly arriving at the pearly gates, no longer held back by your failing body, being welcomed in by God, your trusted Heavenly Father. We joked that we were hoping she wasn't trying to rearrange things too much. I'd like to invite Carol and Garth to open Mum's celebration service with prayer. Garth's just
Well, I'm privileged to be able to pray at the beginning of Margaret's celebration service, so that's very important. So I'm going to ask, if you would, bow your heads with us. Heavenly Father, we dedicate this service in acknowledgement this afternoon of Margaret's life and of faith in you, to celebrate the great memories we have and to remember the good things, the joy, the comfort that Margaret brought into the lives of so many others, the cherished memories of time spent together, the fun that was had along the way. We invite your presence to comfort and cover all who are gathered here this afternoon, and we declare truth that Margaret firmly believed.
Romans 8:38 and 39 says, "For I am convinced that neither death nor life, neither angels nor demons, neither present nor future, nor any powers, neither height nor depth, nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus our Lord." In the name of our Father.
Margaret's younger sister Beverly came along 15 months after Mum. Margaret was born in Huntly and raised in a little place called Waikokowai. Margaret's parents were immigrants from Scotland and had found love on the shores of New Zealand. Her dad was a coal miner and her mum stayed at home looking after the children until Beverly started school at 5. Martha then started working as a sewer at the Burley underwear factory. This was very forward-thinking for that era because most women stayed at home. Martha was a real goer. She loved to sing and dance and was a wonderful mother. Mum described the first 9 years of her life as idyllic. "I had a blissful, glorious childhood." Tragically, in July 1952, Martha was killed in a bus accident, ironically on her way to work. The turmoil of this tragedy changed the course of the family's life and, of course, Mum's. 2 years following her own mum's death, Margaret and Beverly were placed in the care of the Dingwall Children's Home. One contributing reason for this was Mum's attempts to take things into her own hands, resulting in her absconding from school for a whole month. I'd like to call on Auntie Bev now to give us a first-hand account of their life as youngsters. Bev and Uncle Jim.
Sister Bev and Brother Jim.
Brother Jim. I'm here for support.
Sisters. Margaret Ann was my big sister by 15 months. As toddlers, we were known as the Little Nips. The reason for the nickname was our two older siblings, Heather and Jim, had the lofty position of being 8 and 10 years older than us. How that must have disrupted the household. Here is a few snippets about Margaret Ann. Marg was an outdoor kid, always up for an adventure. I was a homely type. As we grew older, the roles seemed to reverse. Being the little sister always gave me security, that my big sister was there for me. Who was I at 7 to question right from wrong? If Marg was doing it, it must be right. She came up with some ideas that did not always get the stamp of approval from the adults, namely our father. Dad used to love dancing. He was widowed early with 2 teens and 2 littlies. Saturday night was his night to dance. Saturday night was also Margaret's night. The kitchen in those days had cupboards up to the ceiling, and that was where Dad stored his home brew, out of reach from little arms, except for Marg. No sooner had Dad put on his dancing shoes and departed, I was ordered to hold the chair and up she would climb. Get the bottle out, have a drink, which I'm sure tasted terrible, and fill the bottle up with water. Why, we ask? Because she could. And she was full of mischief. And our father blamed our big brother for it. Marg, of course, always did have a nice smile. Another bright idea of hers was wagging school. The first week was fun, but it was lonely. So she thought she would invite other children to join in. Dad only found out when a letter arrived from the headmaster. They were hard days for a single parent, so Dad made a decision, much to the delight of Marg. We would have to go into care. I think at the time she must have been reading Anne of Green Gables and dreamed of going to boarding school. Dingwall was not quite the boarding school I imagined it would be, but Marg found her security there. In hindsight, Marg was intelligent, inquisitive, and fiercely independent as a child, always chasing an adventure. Having lost our mum while very young had a lasting impact on all the family. However, Marg saw the magic in herself, and having no one to share it, she just did it all by herself. Her chosen career was nursing, which she was very proud of. The graduation was held at the Auckland Town Hall, and Kiri Tikanua made her first public appearance at the event. We never had the opportunity of living in the same town or had parents to reach out to bind us together as a family. Hence, as young mothers, we didn't spend a lot of time together. The true bonding took place in our 30s. The phones have been ringing hot ever since. I learned over the years that my sister was a cross the T's and dot the I type of girl. She told me her kitchen was her happy place. After she retired, we were both confident cooks, but with very different styles. Marg's was follow the recipe, mine was throw it together. How we both loved MasterChef. She also loved her garden. When I stayed with her last year, her fig tree was producing. The pleasure she got from that each morning going out picking the figs was lovely to witness. Her plants were looked after like little patients, administering food and water as per the label instructions exactly. Marg was not a girl that took shortcuts. Directions meant a lot to her. We found that we had grown into two very different flowers from the same garden, and that having a sister truly is a wonderful gift. For me, my sister is a little bit of childhood that can never be lost. I had the pleasure and privilege of following my lovely sister step by step throughout her end journey. How she conducted herself never ceased to amaze me. She told me that she couldn't wait to cheerfully start climbing the ladder to heaven. I have made inquiries, and sadly the phone line to heaven is very selective. So here is my last goodbye call to a lovely sister. I don't cry because it's over. I smile because it happened.
I would just like to say that as a 7-year-old child at the time, when Margaret arrived in the house, I had no idea how she came, and I was told I requested that she get sent back because she was too noisy. But from there will come all the troubles.
Auntie Elaine.
Just because I've got grey hair and old, I get upstairs. Good afternoon. My name's Elaine Dodds. I'm the biggest sook around. Following on about gardens, God's gardens. God looked around his garden and found an empty place. He then looked down upon the earth and saw your tired face. He put his arms around you and lifted you to rest. God's garden must be beautiful. He always takes the best. He knew that you were suffering. He knew you were in pain. He knew that you would never get well on earth again. He saw the road was getting rough and the hills were hard to climb. So he closed your weary eyelids and whispered, "Peace be thine." It broke our hearts to lose you, but you didn't go alone. For part of us went with you the day God called you home. Sister Margaret was known. We always called her Sister Margaret because we had so many Margaret friends. The phone would go and Jim said, "Who's that?" "Oh, it's Sister Margaret." And Sister Margaret was right from years later. She was always Sister Margaret. And she was my sister too.
Thank you, Auntie Bev and Auntie Elaine. Bev, you lovingly conveyed the essence of Mum in your close relationship. You have a beautiful way with words, and we cherish what you shared today. Thank you. I'd like to read a letter written by Mum to her older sister Heather and uncle and husband Snow. We think this was written when Mum was about 13 whilst at Dingwall, and illustrates her delightful relationship with Auntie Bev, referred to as Bebster in the letter. Dear Heather and Snow, lucky I'm in the mood for writing, or else you wouldn't have got this letter. Don't worry, we didn't blow ourselves up on Guy Fawkes night. Have you noticed that very slowly it is dying out? Gosh, I was surprised. Hasn't the weather been funny? Every day I go to school without a raincoat or cardigan, and every night I've walked home drenched to the skin. It's a wonder I haven't caught pneumonia. We had our outing on last Saturday, and in the afternoon we took Dad to see a film. Beverly chose it. It was supposed to be a comedy, and it turned out to be a business thing. It was so boring that everyone in the theatre went to sleep. I was sitting next to Dad, and the next minute his head falls back, and you know how Dad snores. Isn't it awful and loud? Well, he started to snore. I felt that embarrassed that I didn't know what to do, so I had to wake him up. Gosh, I felt awful. You couldn't tell Beverly what was a good film. She knew. Boy, I was fuming. Poor old Bebster, she found the film so boring that she was going to walk out. Halfway through. It's funny to look back on now. I'm sitting in school at the moment, and the rain has just stopped. You know how old Bebster is a big guts. Well, sorry, Auntie Bev. Well, the other day, her girlfriend bought her a raspberry drink to school. She told Bev that the only way to get a good taste was to drink it flat out and take big mouthfuls, that's what Bebster did. She had drunk about half the bottle before the taste started to take effect. Poor old Bebster was just about sick, because it was made up of beetroot juice and Epsom salts. Could you imagine it? Well, I've said just about all the news, so I'll say cheerio for now. Love, Beverly and Margaret. I love this letter for lots of reasons. In spite of having faced huge change and loss, it shows Mum's personality and character, her forthrightness and freely giving of her opinions, her positivity and resilience, and her confidence in her place in the family and her world. The way Mum has journeyed at the end of her life reflects all of these characteristics also, however, with the addition of her faith and maturity. We often joke that Mum's faith has tempered some of her forthrightness and opinions. Throughout Mum's early years, several themes emerged: her desire to be a nurse, her creativity, and her developing faith. At the age of 13, a visiting evangelist, Ivor Powell, came to Dingwall and preached. His message had a life-changing impact on Mum and touched her heart. She responded and became a Christian. She had a very real experience and knew this was a pivotal moment in her life. She also realised her Christian journey would be solo because she didn't know anyone else who was a Christian, and she asked the Lord to look after her. As well, she had the foresight to ask for her own Bible, one that was easy to read for her, so she could develop her relationship with Jesus. Later, when she met Dad, they discovered that they had both become Christians at the age of 13, and her faith journey no longer had to be solo, but could be shared with Dad. Please stand so that we can listen or sing to two songs. I've decided to follow Jesus. This is really meaningful to Mum because it reflects her experience and her reliance on Jesus to journey her faith path alone initially. The second song also reflects Mum's faith journey and the appreciation she and many of us feel for God's presence with us through our lives. Levi, Abby and Mercedes will lead us in these songs.
Decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. No turning back. No turning back. The world behind me, the cross before me. The world behind me, the cross before me. The world behind me, the cross before me. No turning back, no turning back. Go with me, still I will follow. Though none go with me, still I will follow. Though none go with me, still I will follow. No turning back, no turning back. Will you decide now to follow Jesus? Will you decide now to follow Jesus? Will you decide now to follow Jesus? No turning back, no turning back. Decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. No turning back, no turning back. No turning back, no turning back. Love you, Lord, for your mercy never fails me. All my days I've been held in your hands. The moment that I wake up, till I lay my head, I will sing all the goodness of God. darkest nights, you were close like no other. I know you as a father, I know you as a friend, and I have lived in the goodness of God. All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so good. Every breath that I am able, I will sing of the goodness of God. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down, I surrender now. I give you everything. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down, I surrender now. I give you everything. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so good. Every breath that I am able, I will sing of the goodness of God. I will sing of the goodness of God.
Thank you, Levi, Mercedes, and Abby. It's beautiful. At the age of 16 and a half, Mum left Dingwall to pursue her nursing training. Mum recalled as a young girl her father took her through the Hamilton Hospital. He was a groundsman there. Mum was absolutely enthralled and imagined herself in a white uniform being a nurse. She never faltered in her desire to be a nurse, but couldn't start this until she was 17. So in the 6 months interim, she nurse aided. Mum graduated as a registered nurse in 1964 and was deeply proud of her achievement. Some of Mum's nursing highlights include the lifelong friends that she made, one of which was Nolene Heswell. We found a letter that Nolene wrote to Mum recently, recalling their time of living together for 3 years while in the Middlemore nursing home, clicking instantly and remaining friends up to this day. They bought scooters to get around and had train rides to the Papatoetoe dances, sometimes missing the last train home. Nolene ended up marrying a patient, Len, and had a beautiful marriage for 47 years, but this meant she regrettably couldn't finish her nursing training. Mum and Nolene caught up whenever they could, and Nolene valued Mum's friendship and memories that spanned over 60 years. Another dear nursing friend was Judy Glintmeyer, who very recently passed away. She and Mum will be having a great catch-up in heaven. Prue was another dear nursing friend of Mum's. She and Robin Drummond have been integral in the care of Mum in the past few weeks, for which we will be eternally grateful. In the process, the three of us have become friends also. Prue left on Wednesday for a trip to the UK. She's pre-recorded an account for us, and Mum insisted she keep referring to her as Maggie Willie.
Primarily at the time of reading where she lived 15 years before she retired. But I know this is a real privilege to choose me to do this meeting. But the funny thing about it is tribute to him for me to me is that it isn't my own work. And this is the first for me, because many of me and I worked on this together. She wanted to know what I was going to say. To explain. Maggie had previously worked in an administration role and she'd retired for the first time, but she was getting bored at home. And a friend suggested that she try practice nursing and introduced her to the medical director at their surgery, who encouraged her to try it out. As she knew that there was so much to learn before she felt proficient, she volunteered there for 8 months before she felt she was actually proficient enough to go on staff. Now, Maggie didn't want to put that bit in, but I pulled rank and I said that it might be her funeral, but it's my slot. And I think it says a lot about her strength of character and I wanted in. So for that one, I won. She does want it known, however, that although she didn't receive a wage, she was looked after in many other ways. Her input was definitely appreciated and was not taken for granted. And she went on to work for another 12 and a half years at Mediqual before she retired for the second time. Now, Maggie Willie says about her time at Mediqual that it was challenging, that she was stretched, that she learned that she was capable of a lot more than she thought that she was capable of, and that this was largely due to the leadership at the surgery encouraging Maggie to work to the full scope of her practice. And as a result, Maggie says that working at Mediqual was the best job she ever had. And through it, she made several wonderful friends. Friendships that lasted her until, and this is in Maggie Willie's own words, those very same friends said goodbye, Margaret, and saw her off to heaven. Maggie was the one who got me my job at Mediqual. She was my mentor. She taught me the ropes. She talked me through things. She encouraged me. She held my hand when I needed it. And I still quote her when in turn I am teaching new nurses. Maggie was the mother at Mediqual. She was a wise and stable presence in the surgery. Excuse me, and I remember that when she left, I said that if ever I was to become the Margaret of Mediqual, it was time for me to leave, because I didn't think I could do what she did. But here I am 15 years later. Now, that was one bit I didn't want to put in. But Maggie was then, she pulled rank and she said she did want it in because she thought it was lovely. So for this one, she wins. Because it was such a busy workplace and being a medical practice, it's inevitable that sometimes it was stressful. And it was a huge necessity for us to have social times together, workplace meals and other get-togethers out of work hours. And because of this, deep friendships were forged. We had a very supportive workplace network. Now, those friendships are something that Margaret deems to be very precious. We did discuss, Maggie and I, how important it was for folk to be able to have a laugh and to share a story at a time like this. And there were so many stories, but so many of them we'd laugh about and then go, oh, we can't say that. But Maggie does remember very fondly going to a conference in Dunedin where, and this shows our age, cell phones were brand new, and although we did have one, we all had one, but we were novices and we weren't really very proficient with them. And Dr. Annie showed considerable patience as she taught Margaret how to text. I'll leave you to picture that, because Annie was very, very patient and she was largely unsuccessful. At that same conference was a doctor we were working with at the time, and he was a very tactile person who couldn't help but give a hug or rub your back or touch you as he spoke with you. And this was just his way, and it was a rather delightful way. But he did have to be told that sometimes it was inappropriate and they had to be careful to not cause any potential misunderstanding. So when he was spoken to about this, and this was in front of Maggie and myself, he was told it was best not to be tactile while at work. However, it's perfectly okay with Margaret and Prue because they're both old. So from all of us at Mediqual, I say a heartfelt thank you to Maggie Willie for all the work, for the heart that she showed during her time at the surgery and for all the years afterwards. She's a true friend. So now I'm here, along with the others of your Mediqual friends, to say goodbye, Margaret, to see you off to heaven. And I'll see you later.
Prue, if you manage to be zooming in wherever you are, thank you. That was wonderful. Your recollections of working with Mum at Mediqual and your friendship. Prue reference to Dr. Annie. Annie, you've been such a support to Mum in her last days, sitting with her one night to give the family a rest. We're so grateful to you, and to Leah, who did this also, and to the others who sat with Mum so that she was never alone in her final days. Nursing is such a necessary yet tireless profession. I remember at times Mum being absolutely exhausted when she came home after work. If Mum had been able to work less and stay at home, I believe she probably would have. The physical toll nursing took on Mum was immense, and now in hindsight, some of her back pain may have been related to the onset of the cancer, not only the physical nature of nursing, as she always put it down to. Or it could have been in relation to her big breasts. Mum was absolutely ecstatic to have them removed due to the breast cancer and found a new lease of life following this. Mum worked as a nurse well into her 60s, as Prue alluded to. Some of Mum's less stressed and happy times were when she finally retired. Bev alluded to Mum being a dotting the I's and crossing the T's sort of a person. This is such a necessary part of nursing, and it crossed over to many aspects of Mum's life, particularly latterly as she made sure that she and Dad had their blister packs of pills counted out and thoroughly accurate. Contrary to following the rules and being quite particular, Mum was not one to shy away from trying new things, if she saw the benefits of them. So I'll just now call on Garth to share one of Mum's forays from the straight and narrow.
It seems like an appropriate introduction. On one of the afternoons, we were visiting Peter and Marg, which was always a great occasion, by the way, Peter, and thank you for that. She asked if I would be able to share a story on her and really on behalf of Blair as well at her funeral, to which I thought the only reasonable response is to say an immediate, yes, of course I will, not knowing what was about to follow. So after a few raised eyebrows and some good belly laughs later, the following details emerged. During a period where Marg was struggling to find effective relief from arthritic pain through conventional medication. Blair, her son, came up with the inspired idea of supplying Mum with some electric puha, Sweet Mary Jane or marijuana by any other name. Which he had determined would be more effective at relieving the symptoms than any other medication she was taking, which weren't having the desired effect. So for a very brief period of about 3 long months, Margaret would kick back at night, pull out her gear and roll a spliff. Often accompanied by her favourite Bob Marley soundtrack, or the little-known music band, Musical Youth, and their hit song, Pass the Dutchie on the left-hand side. Those last details may not be true, but I could imagine. And she would have a real crack, as stated earlier in proceedings, of going up in smoke. And after having a huff and puff, as she termed it, each day over this period of time, and not really feeling anything, she decided it wasn't actually having much effect. So please don't be surprised when Puff the Magic Dragon starts playing in tribute as we're leaving the service today. And also, we may have stumbled upon the reason Blair is unable to be here this afternoon, as he's been extradited to Canada and may not be allowed back in the country.
Thank you, Garth. Mum would have loved it. So let's wind back to Mum and Dad's story. In 1963, Mum was invited to go on a blind date. It was about the 6th one that she'd gone on, and she was getting a bit over them. This one was at a mutual friend's barbecue, and it was there she met Peter. The music you heard on arrival... I love this photo. They were engaged in this photo. The music you heard on arrival was some of the music that she and Dad loved dancing to. This was the music of their time. They married 1 year later. And over the next 9 years, had 3 wonderful children, Mum's words. Peter worked for the courts in those days and was transferred around the country. They spent some years in Papakura. Vicky and Evan were born there. Martin, Blair was born there. Morrinsville, and finally settled in Christchurch in 1982. 42 years later, Christchurch remains their home. Mum was happiest at home and loved her home and garden. She remained an avid reader, an accomplished sewer, and as Bev said, loved cooking. Anything creative, Mum embraced. She did really well at. Fimo beads, macrame pot holders, mosaics, so that mirror there Mum made, knitting and crochet. This display includes this beautiful crochet rug and other of Mum's creations. The crochet rug is beautiful. So Mum started to make this when she became unwell. Her friend Jane, who is live streaming this, came out from the UK earlier in the year and bought the pattern for it, and they started working on it together. Mum created all the larger pieces but was unable to complete it, and so Jeanette Height stepped in and kindly finished it for Mum and did all the smaller pieces and sewed it together. It was lovingly displayed on Mum's bed at Nurse Maud in her final days. Peter and Margaret established a wonderful network of friends during their time in Christchurch and also the other places that they've lived. Mum was a very gregarious person and loved to be with people, but her greatest love was Dad. If she was asked to describe her marriage, she would say she was the most fortunate of women who had the great privilege of growing up and growing old with her best friend and love. In February of this year, Mum and Dad celebrated their 59th wedding anniversary. I'd like to call Dad to come and share some memories of Mum.
See. These white ones. Just, yeah. Better put my disguise on that I lost a while back. Before I say anything about Marg, I just want to say hi to my family and friends who are watching this morning on the live stream. Sorry you can't be with us, but yeah, I know you're all there waiting and watching. And to all my friends that are here this morning and mates who are wondering about my culinary skills, I'd just like to tell you that I no longer need to stop in the car park at the supermarket and read the book. But I have found my way into it and know where the vegetables start and the milk finishes that walk around the place. And I'd also like to inform you that Marg in her wisdom a few years ago said, Pete, you really need to do a course on cooking. Oh, okay. So I did. And along the line, I think I might have picked up one or two ideas that may stick in the next few years that I'm here. But getting to Marg, there's a wise statement that has been written into history that says, he who finds a wife finds a good thing and obtains favour with the Lord. And that same book of wisdom says, an excellent wife is the crown of the husband. For me, Margaret is the excellent wife. And our lives have always been full of together adventures. And boy, we've had a few. Yes, at the tender age of 18, I'd been going to the Papatui dances for a while that have just been mentioned. And, but at that stage, I had another real encounter with the Lord. And I said to him, Lord, the next girl I meet, I want her to be my wife. And at the tender age of 18, I met Margaret. And that was, as already mentioned, on a blind date at Huapai. Yeah. And it took me about 3 weeks to buck up the courage to give her a ring, because she was in the nurses' home at Middlemore Hospital. And that's another thing altogether. But so we said, yep, we'll have this date. And I caught the bus, went into Papatui Day, around the Middlemore Hospital, got on Marg's Vespa, motor scooter, and we off to the movies. First date. Great. Things were good, trundling along, no problem at all. Then it hosed down with rain. And so where do we shelter? How do we get out of this? And do you all remember the red telephone boxes, comfortable places to hide in. And a little while later, yes, we fell in love. And I proposed. At that stage, I was 19 and Margaret was 20. And in recent years, and some of you have heard me in the conversation, talk about her being my cougar. We were only 3 months apart in age, but it was worth riding for a while. Also, during our engagement, we had many visits to Hamilton and over to the North Shore to catch up with Margaret's dad, Heather, Jim and Elaine, Bev, and Dennis, who unfortunately is unable to be with us today. And in recent years, we've all built up a lasting legacy, and we hope it's caught on, because we were having a few hoots over the table last night over the legacy we've built up, and that is having regular siblings get-togethers. Doesn't matter where, just make sure we've got time to get to wherever, and that could be anywhere, here in New Zealand or around the world. Marg and I had to wait until we were 21 to get married, because in those days you had to get the permission of your parents, and they had to sign it if you're under 21. And so we moved into our first flat after we were married on the 14th of February. Margaret still worked in Middlemore Hospital, and I was at that stage had transferred from Pukekohe to the Auckland Magistrates Court. And then we, as newlyweds, we discussed the future. And one of the goals was that Margaret would never lose her calling to nursing. I was secure in the public service at that stage. Margaret was just starting off in her nursing career. I said, no, go for it, kid. That's your thing. Go, you know. And so that she'd always been there. But then also, I discovered that Marg couldn't cook. And so we had to take steps to make sure that her culinary skills or cooking skills were brought up to a certain standard. And so I introduced her to my mum. And hence, from that point on, cooking for Pete became a major thing. I did well. And then along came our family, Vicky first, and that was a performance that morning. I was ready to go to work, just walking out the door, go down the road, catch the bus, and Marg walks out, "Hey, Bill, I think." Oh. And I straight back inside, keys to car, get it out of this, ring her girlfriend Alice, and Alice, I know you'll be watching this today too, and call Alice. Hey Alice, come down. Alice was one of Mark's working colleagues, nursing mates. And so she came down, sat in the back seat with Mark, and we off to Middlemore Hospital, where Vicky was born. And on that day, I, being the good public servant and the thing I was, rang my boss and said, "Hey boss, I'm at Middlemore. My wife's having a baby. I won't be in." "Get hidden back in here, boy. There's no place for you to be there. No place for, the males at all in that. Get to work." Of course, I didn't obey. I'm just looking around. Hi, Neil. Neil and I worked here in Christchurch for years at the courts. And then along came Evan. and he lit our lives up real good. Poor old Ed, he gets there, we got him, and he was a good crybaby. Yeah, haven't heard this one before, have you? Yeah, he was a good crybaby. So, and we had him in the room right next to us in that flat we're in. So Ev was duly marched down to the other end of the flat so that the flat next door could hear him and not us. But we had a lot of fun. And he and Vicky would go, in that particular flat, we had a big veranda outside. And Vicky, being a bit older, would call out to the neighbours, "Oi!" And they would call back. And Evan would be there beside her, just sort of, "Oh, what's going on, you know." But, yeah. And then from there, we all moved from Papakura at that stage down to Martin. And Mark then started working at the maternity hospital in Martin. And initially we rented a house out in the country and it had a piggery attached to it, so I had a few pigs running. And I was also looking after ours, there was a 60-acre block with beef and stuff on it, and so we did that. And also, I was playing around with going out on hay and grading gangs, while Mark was looking after the kids in this flat cottage. But we moved out of that cottage pretty quickly. Why? Because Mark decided that it was too noisy. And I tried to figure out what's the problem. We were getting small earthquakes fairly regularly at that stage. And the old-fashioned houses, remember they had those lead pulleys in the windows and they rattled like crazy? Well, these rattled like crazy, and because Mark got freaked out. Said, "No, we're moving back into town." Right, yes, sir. So we did. And then we moved back into town, got really involved in the community, in the church there. I was into rugby. And then, to our surprise, Blair. But he was a wonderful surprise. And Vicky and got a choke now. Yeah, Vicky and Ev and I took them and to visit Marg when she'd had Blair, and I'd have to pull them up to the window because we couldn't go inside. And they saw and looked at him. And then from there, it was time to change community again. And before we did that, Marg was getting into cooking big time again. And the competitive edge in me said, "Well, I should do some cooking, eh?" So we got into bread making, and that was a competition, and the kitchen was a competition too. And I made sure that we ended up with a few laughs if we didn't do anything else. Yeah. And then from there, we encountered again the charismatic move, and really got involved into the church community again at that stage. And then from Martin, we moved to Morrinsville. And as far as church things were concerned, we picked up a fresh vision and we planted a new church into that community. And during that time, and I think Vicky may be bringing something up shortly, so I won't go too deep into it. But there was a raising awareness for Margaret and I that, okay, if we're getting into this pastoral thing and community thing, we needed to broaden our thinking and horizons and we did a whole lot of other stuff to do that.
After leaving Morrinsville, we came to Christchurch, and here we saw Vicky, Evan and Blair grow into their strengths as adults. And we loved seeing them build on the strengths that they were given in their lives. And then they brought into our lives a tremendous addition in that of their partners, Shane, Diane and Jenny. And man, we've had a lot of fun as a group to have that. And then also Mark grew in her nursing experience by moving disciplines and then settling on practice nursing, which was her major love at the end. But how many of us, and I look around the room, how many of us have benefited from that nursing knowledge? I know that my phones, or Mark's phones, run red hot at times, asking different questions and so on. And then, of course, in Christchurch, we've had the additional extension of the family, and with all of our much loved grandkids coming, Levi, Jacob, Caden, Bethany, Samaya, Jesse and Maeve. And also in the past decades, 3 decades, we've welcomed our extended family as well, that being Isabel, Sally and Sue, and Joy and Dave, who are here today. Now in latter years, we have enjoyed many cruises, trips overseas to Australia, Hawaii, through the States and Canada, and some with Margaret's brother and sisters and partners. And last night, we were having a great time around the table, weren't we? Reminiscing on some of that. It was fabulous. And also Margaret reinvented her passion for cooking, and we've all been recipients of that creativity. For me, I was so pleased that our kitchen could only manage one chef. Although Bina, who's here too, she had a permission to invade that space as well. However, I didn't. I made sure I kept away. But there's always another side to the kitchen, isn't there? And you're looking at it. Chief Galley Cleaner Upper. Recently, we've also journeyed through major health issues. I've had a number over the years, but Mark's really, over the last 2 years, it's been a real journey. But that hasn't stopped her social skills coming to the fore, even in Nurse Maud. She was like the Queen, waiting for her courtiers to come and present themselves. But it's been a load of fun. And along the way, we've had fabulous support with friends and family, and we thank those here today who have been part of that. All these adventures we've known together, have been immersed in love, joy, understanding and support. And we're as a team, we have relied on our centre, always on our centre. That's in our faith and trust in the Lord. So today, Margie, kiddo, we release you to another adventure we can't share just yet. You have run your race well, using the talents given to you and shared with us, this family and the wider community, nursing as a friend and an exhorter, encourager and mentor. Until we meet again, love forever. Moi.
Thank you, Dad. It was Mum's wish that the following song be played for Dad at her memorial service. I'll Never Find Another You, sung by Judith Durham and the Seekers, Mum's favourite band. When Mum chose that song, she and I were listening to it. It was over the summer and we're sitting in the garden. We were both in tears. I said, Mum, that's just beautiful, but I had to listen to it several times before I'd be able to just hear it here today. It goes without saying that Mum's other great loves were us, her children, Evan, Blair and myself, and her grandchildren, Levi, Caden, Jacob, Bethany, Samaya, Jessie and Maeve. We brought Mum great pride and pleasure. We'll now hear from Blair, who is in Canada and who can't be with us in person today.
Hi everybody. I hope this comes through. I wanted to start by acknowledging everybody there. You're a very lucky group of people to have known my mum. Some of you are old friends, some of you are new friends, family. I count you all and myself lucky to have had Margaret in our lives. She was a friend, she was an encourager, she was a confidant, she was a counsellor, She was a wise woman, and I mean, she could be bossy. She could be a warrior for sure. She could be bossy, especially if your name was Peter and you were driving, or perhaps, God forbid, she wanted to take a family photo. But she loved all of us in her way. Everybody that's there today. And to my family, I just wish I could be there right now. And Dad, my thoughts go to you, especially. We've lost our mum, and there's people here that have lost their friend, but you have lost your Maggie, and I just wish I could be there to hold you now. In case you didn't know, my mum didn't have a mum. She was gone early, and Mum once said to me that she wanted to be the kind of mum that she wished and imagined she might have had. And I guess she had a really good imagination, because she was the best mum. And she was the greatest mum in the world. That's what she was to me. She was more than my mum. She was my friend. And we had fun together. You know, she taught me that life could be incredibly difficult, but it didn't have to be all that serious. I remember as a young man, Mum had got into sewing, and she would sew a lot of clothes, and happened to be sewing boxer shorts for me. I would have been maybe 14. We were in a sewing store, and a group of girls walked in that was sort of my age, and of course I was interested. I was getting a little closer to the group, and we were in a fabric store, and all of a sudden I hear honey, honey. And I was at that point standing next to these girls, and I looked across, and Mum was right across the other side of the store, holding up a long roll of bright pink fabric, and she called to me, "Honey, what color did you want me to make your knickers?" That's just the relationship we had. She could give as good as she got, and I'm going to miss Mum. I'm going to miss Mum a lot. And I was thinking about things that I remember Mum saying, and 3 things came to mind that I want to share, and there were 3 things that I think carry for me. And the first one was bugger. Mum always used to say bugger, you know, whether it was a stub toe or not enough eggs for the meal, or I don't know, maybe the house guests just tried to hold up the bank with the scissors that Mum gave them that morning. True story. But bugger, you know, life was difficult. Things didn't work out the way you wanted them to all the time. And Mum's approach was, you don't hold grudges, you don't harbour anger, and you invest your energy into moving on. You know, bugger, but keep going. She was always busy about some sort of business. The other thing she used to say was, your dad is my best friend. And that platform gave us a place of incredible safety to be a family, and that it was possible to find someone that you could be with forever, and somehow it would be easy. Even when Dad weeded the garden and pulled out all of her favourite plants, you know, it was still possible to carry on. And Mum was your best friend. She would tell anyone that. And the other thing she used to say was, I love you. I love all my kids. Mum's whole approach was to be unashamed of us, to be unashamed of her love for us and her commitment to us and her longing for us to be well, and her longing for us to be well with her and to be in relationship. And she truly did love all of us. She built us up. She encouraged us. She was intentional about the way that she did that, and she was open about that. And I think that's an incredible lesson today, is for me, is to carry on that, to be open unashamedly, to love the people around us unashamedly, and no matter what, let them know. I often tell a story of Levi when he was young. Levi, thank you for being there, son. You represent, you're a beautiful man. When Levi was very young, I asked him what he thought love meant, and he said, "That's easy, Dad. It's when you care about someone else enough for them to be confident and to be free." And I believe that's how Mum loved. She loved all of us in a way that I hope leaves us a little more confident and a little more free, having had her in our life. And we're going to miss you. I'm going to miss you, Mum. Everyone is going to miss Margaret Ann Williams, the firecracker, you know. And right now she's the freest of us all. And I just want to say again, thank you all for being there, for honouring my mum. She was an amazing, amazing mum and an incredible woman. Dad, I love you. I'm thinking of you all, family. And in the immortal words of Mum, bugger.
Thank you, Blair. You've had a huge part of this journey with Mum, checking in at least twice daily at the end of Mum's life journey. We love you, and we look forward to seeing you in person later in the year. Mum did indeed love each of us equally. Our love for her over her last days has been expressed differently from each of us kids. Evan and Di have quietly been there for Mum, Evan at night tucking her in and making sure she was in her PJs and calm and comfortable. Thank you, Ev. It was a beautiful, compassionate and humble thing to witness. I'd now like to call on Diane to share her account of Mum.
I don't know how I'm supposed to follow that. Sure, goodness. So I'm Dwayne. Obviously, Evan's
wife, and I've been part of the Williams. I was warmly welcomed into the Williams family when I started dating Evan, and have become part of the family for just over 26 years. Peter and Margaret lived back in Cooper's Road back then, and it was there that I learnt about Margaret's love of cooking. They had several Asian students that had been living with them then, and Margaret, being Margaret, wanted them to have a taste of home, so she learnt how to cook Asian food. This was gladly force-fed to us, along with Peter's favourite Brussels sprouts, as Evan would say. Since then, we've tried many different foods, even Indian, which she'd been learning to cook with friends up to a few months ago. Margaret, as I think we all know by now, was such a people person. I don't think I realised just how many people she knew and how many friends she had. There've been many times we've called in just on the way past to find people already visiting there. She really collected friends and she's kept them, and it's lovely to have put names to faces that we've heard about over the years. And as everyone else has also said, she really did have a way with people. She would just scoop you in, and before you knew it, you were sharing your life story with her and you had a friend. She just talked to people and accepted them for who they were. But that didn't stop her, as once again, from sharing her opinions. She would be pleased that I'm using the microphone because that was one of her instructions. And when it came to Evan and I, we would listen and have discussions, and sometimes we just had to agree to disagree, and she would leave it at that. But she was always open to listening and hearing what we would have to say. When we talked about getting a trampoline, we had several lectures about the injuries she'd seen from those death traps. But we only had 2 accidents. Jacob walked backwards off the tramp and broke a bone in his elbow, and Levi's teeth got embedded in Bethany's skull at one stage, which just needed some glue, but that good outweighed the bad. Needless to say, it was humbling to have to call her and tell her there'd been an accident, but I don't remember her telling her, saying, "I told you so." Over the years, Margaret and I went on many different garden tours. I really enjoyed these, as Margaret is just so full of knowledge about plants, and she talked to everyone while we were along the way. I really enjoyed the one-on-one times, and especially when we stayed in Akaroa overnight. When the time came that she couldn't do the tours anymore, we would catch up for coffee, often at a garden centre where we'd walk around and design our gardens. Another aspect I really loved about Margaret was her medical knowledge. I'm sure many of you have been subject to this. Having her on call when you've got 3 children, and Evan as a husband, has really been a blessing. I remember calling her many times and always getting an answer, whether I wanted to hear it or not. Like when the boys, 2-year-old twins, got into my thyroid medication, I called Margaret thinking, well, it's a natural product, it won't be a bother, but soon learnt I needed to get to hospital ASAP. I know even recently the boys have been calling on Nana to find out certain things. Evan always called her the butcher from Belfast, the medical centre she worked from, but I soon also learned that if you said anything about needing something popped, she'd be out there with a needle, heading straight for it. Another thing I love about Margaret was her love for her family. Many years ago, her and Pete took a chance on a little redhead boy, adopting them into their family, and since then she just got Evan. Not many people do sometimes, with the saying and things to her that she could get away with. She just got his sense of humour, and he will really miss her for that. Jacob also found that recently when he went to show her his recent tattoo. Margaret just didn't have her usual level of enthusiasm, and that's when Jacob realised his wonderful Nana wasn't herself. Margaret always made time for her grandchildren. Right from the start, she told us she didn't do babies, which was fair enough because we had twins for a start. She did babysit, however, and when the kids were older, she loved to spend one-on-one time with them. She would find activities that she knew they would enjoy, baking, shopping, mosaics, and I know they've all enjoyed that special time. Margaret had an amazing faith. When we bought our first house, she prayed, her and Pete prayed, along with some friends, for passion and children over in some of the rooms. We found that was a bit too keen because, yes, we'd end up with twins. I can't believe this journey is over. It's been such a pleasure to be part of. Margaret has led us through each stage, sharing what she knew, what was happening, and asking us what we wanted to know along the way. I had no idea what I wanted to know, or what there was to know, but she was so open about it, it really did make the process easier. Garth, Peter and Margaret's pastor from City Church, shared a verse from 1 Corinthians 15 at the cremation ceremony. In it, it says, "O death, where is your sting?" And for me, Margaret's unwavering faith took that sting away. Death wasn't something to be feared. I've never known someone to be so keen to get to heaven. Seeing Margaret raising her hands, calling out, "I'm coming," will be something that I always remember. She could just see where she was going, and she just wanted to get there. It just took longer than expected. She was really cared for well by the staff at Nurse Maud. They were so lovely, and many of them told us they enjoyed caring for her. I will treasure these moments. I love you and I'll miss you dearly, but I'm comforted to know you're in the arms of Jesus and I will see you again. And my sister is now living in Australia, and she, her and her family were living in Christchurch for a little while, and she just messaged as well with a quick word. She just says, "Margaret immediately made us feel like part of her family, fussing over our boys and ensuring they were never left out of any family activities. Our boys were treated as one of her grandchildren from day one, which made them feel so special in a new country. Family was so important to her and she loved them wholeheartedly. When Margaret became sick, she's just got on with it, never putting a burden on anyone, just taking steps to deal with it gracefully and individually as only she could do. I admire her way of dealing with her whole illness. We will never forget you, Margaret, and thank you for making us feel like family. I hope you are at peace. Hugs to all the family. We love you and are thinking of you. Judy, Brian, Ben and Luke." Cool. So yeah, shall I? Yeah. So we'll just get Jacob's going to come up and say a word.
Hello. So I was lucky enough, I wrote this letter to Nana and I was lucky enough to read it out to her at the hospital. So I'll get into that. So it's, "Hi Nana, I'm happy I've been lucky enough to have you as my grandparent. I've always loved going and visiting you and Granddad because you two are always showing me what a happy relationship looked like. You and Granddad have definitely helped me become the person I am today, and I am very grateful as you have shown me to be kind and caring to others, and you've always treated us to your yummy cooking and baking. I don't have a lot of memories of when I was young, but I know from the old home videos and some memories that you were always helping and cheering everyone up. I remember when we used to have sleepovers at your place when we were little, and we used to get scared of you and Granddad snoring. It has been so nice having Auntie Vicky up here, and I'm happy she is here to help you and Granddad. I really wanted to get the tattoo for you and Granddad, and I'm really happy that you like it because I want a reminder of my amazing grandparents, and I'll always be able to tell anyone who asks how lucky I am to be able to have grown up with such love and care from them, and also the love and care that they have shown Mum and Dad. I love you as my Nana so much, and I'm so grateful that I have been able to learn and grow up with you and Granddad's support. Thank you for everything you've done for me. I never expressed how thankful I am to have you as my Nana. I want to be like you and Granddad when I grow older, as you two always cheered me and everyone up around you. I do remember you reading to me as a kid, and I'm sure I wouldn't love books and cooking as much as I do now without your influence. Thank you for being my Nana. I am happy that you are so calm, and I know you'll be looking over me and wishing me the best. I love you so much, Nana, and thank you for all that you have done. And thank you for all that you have done for me. Love, Jacob."
Thank you, Jacob. Nana treasured that letter from you. And thank you, Di. They were beautiful words. A key foundation to Mum's love for us and Dad was her and Dad's shared faith. This was foundational to their relationship and how they raised us as a family. At my birth, they decided to return to attending church more regularly, as they wanted to raise their family in the ways of God. The photo behind us is of my christening. The beautiful gown I'm in was made by Mum from her wedding dress. Mum and Dad were a product of their generation. They'd been born as World War II ended, and their formative teenage and early adult years were around the time of the Vietnam War. Most young people were searching for love and peace, not another war. At the same time, maybe as a result of this, a charismatic Christian movement was happening in the late 60s and early 70s, and this had a profound effect on Mum and Dad. It was exciting and revolutionised their faith. I'd encourage you to watch the movie The Jesus Revolution. This was what Mum and Dad experienced and what influenced their faith and how we were raised. This was yet another time in Mum's life when she really sensed the hand of God on her, directing her in a new spiritual way. I was about 7 at this time and remember being carried along with their new fervour. They were involved with setting up a new church in Morrinsville. They embraced all people who came across their door, and they remain hugely hospitable to this day. I recall one woman who stayed with us. Blair alluded to her in his account of Mum. She'd come to their church, had nowhere to live, and she was struggling with an addiction. They invited her into our home to stay for a while. On the particular day in question, this woman asked Mum if she could borrow her sewing scissors, which were large shears, for her new job. Mum agreed to this. Dad had gone to Hamilton for work, so was away for the day. Later in the day, on the radio, a bank robbery was reported. This was a big deal in sleepy old Morrinsville. A woman had jumped over the desk and separating the customers from the tellers and demanded money. She threatened the teller with, you guessed it, a large pair of sewing scissors. Dad arrived home from Hamilton none the wiser to find the local policeman, who was the husband of one of the parishioners, and the local pastor asking Mum if she knew anything about the sewing scissors or the woman in the armed robbery. I think they were a little more discerning about who they invited to stay with us following that episode, but it never deterred them opening their home and hearts to others. I know Mum and Dad were greatly loved by their church family. Your visits, support and love are evidence of this. This is a huge comfort to me because I know they never experienced loneliness or neglect, as can happen for many of our older people. About 20 years ago, the church honoured Mum and Dad's contribution by gifting them a holiday. It was suggested they take a cruise. They'd recently spent a night on the Milford Wanderer ship, and Mum thought she would like to do something similar to this, so they decided on the Breaksea Girl, an eco-tour of Fiordland and Stewart Island. This proved to be nothing like the Milford Wanderer. It was pretty basic, and if the comfort level of the Wanderer was a 5, the Breaksea Girl was a 1. For those of you who know Mum, what were they thinking? As children, our holidays were always in motels and batches, never tents or outdoorsy. I remember Mum had to buy herself some decent walking shoes because she didn't own any for this eco-trip. Anyway, as you know, when Mum decided on something, she embraced it fully and with enthusiasm. This tour was no different. They arrived down to us in Invercargill, and we duly dropped them off down to the Bluff Wharf to their boat. Well, if I wasn't already dubious, I certainly was after that. The sleeping situation was shared with about 8 others, and it was very small. The tour was for 10 days. One part of the tour involved a 6-hour tramp around Stewart Island. Mum knew she couldn't walk for that long, so the skipper dropped her off at a bay that required she would walk for about an hour and a half. He told her where the track was and that he would collect them all later from an agreed place. This was pre-cell phones. Mum's imagination went into overdrive and she imagined being eaten by wild pigs. She arrived absolutely exhausted, covered in mosquito bites, to a road and hitchhiked into the said meeting place. Dad, on the other hand, absolutely loved the tramp with the others and the whole awesomeness of the eco-tour and wonders of nature that they saw. Needless to say, they never went on an eco-tour again. They stuck to cruises after that. It now gives me great pleasure to invite Barbara Thomas, Mum's lifelong friend, to come and share about her friendship with Mum.
Well, what a time we've had reminiscing and hearing all about Marg and Peter and their journey through life. It's been lovely, hasn't it? Our friendship with Marg and Peter began 42 or 3 years ago. And interestingly enough, it was through Vicky and our younger son, Jeff, when they were in the fourth form at Middleton Grange. They were girl and boyfriend, is that right? Yeah. Marg and Peter had recently moved to Christchurch and we were in the same church, and we soon got to know them. We had some wonderful holidays. We certainly didn't go on the trip that Vicky has just described. Our holidays were in batches or that sort of thing. But together we shared lots of lovely holidays. I remember one in particular, we went several years, or I think 10 years on the trot, to Kaiteriterre. And this particular time we decided to do a boat trip to Tautarunui. Beautiful part of the world, and it's an easy way of walking the Abel Tasman track. And it was so calm and beautiful all the way there. And on the way back, Marg said, "Oh, this is really boring. I think we really need some excitement. You know, I'd like a wind to come up." And sure enough, it did, and the sea was raging. Marg was as happy as Larry, and we were all feeling rather sick. Her expression changed vastly when the child sitting next to her vomited on her legs. Many, many good times there. And then I recall the time that I was up in Auckland on holiday, and my husband was home, and I spoke to him that morning, and he said, "I don't feel very well, I've got a sore throat, I can't swallow very well." And so wasn't quite sure what to do, so I rang Marg. And she came round to the house in Cranford Street. She could see that it was not just a sore throat, that he'd had a stroke. It was a major stroke, but her nursing knowledge was able to help him there, and Peter came over, and together they put him in an ambulance, and he was taken off to hospital. If it wasn't for Marg and Peter, he'd been home by himself, and they really saved the day there, albeit that he wasn't the same after that stroke, but he certainly was better than he would have been. We were all shocked at Marg's diagnosis of cancer, but as we've heard, she really treated it like a medical adventure, you almost would say. Yes. Each stage was, you couldn't call it exciting, but interesting for her. And she was so keen on me going with her to see her have radiation treatment. I don't know that I was quite so keen, but anyway, along I went with her right down into the depths of Christchurch Hospital there. Lovely staff who were very happy to show what happened and so forth, and it was very interesting. But I think what struck me most was the fact that as they set her up and went into the other room, they explained that she had to hold her breath for 25 seconds. Well, that's quite a long time, but when you know that she couldn't move even slightly during that 25 seconds, and she had to do it 6 times, that was quite an achievement. But it was just part of the journey, according to Marg, and she went through that as she went through the other parts of her treatment. And then when she had to go into Nurse Maud Hospital, she referred to it as Hotel Maud. Do you remember that? It wasn't Nurse Maud Hospital, it was Hotel Maud. She felt that she was treated like a guest rather than a patient, and that was lovely too. So we could go on, and I'd just love to hear all the memories, but one in particular that is uppermost, and Marg and I had so much fun laughing about this experience. Marg had a wonderful sense of humour, didn't she? we were in a cafe. We did Thursday lunches for up until the time that she needed to go into care. And this time we were in Portstone Nursery in Ferry Road having lunch. And we were in a booth that's close to the wall with a long bench seat and a table between. And after lunch, she said to me, do you realise that you've only got on one earring? And I'm sure you had two when we first started out. I said, I probably just dropped it around somewhere. And so we started to look, but neither of us were at the stage where we could bend over too far to have a look under the table. But there were two women next door, in the booth next door. And this one particular lady, she even looked older than me. And she got down on her hands and knees, bottom in the air, and she crawled underneath the table to find this earring. Well, when I looked at Marg, I almost couldn't keep a straight face. She was struggling. And so we looked away, and then instead of the lady backing out, she tried to turn round, and so she got stuck. Well, it was so inappropriate for us to be laughing. She didn't find the earring. And we couldn't wait to leave so that we could have a really good laugh. Mark was a wonderful friend to so many of us. And I love the verse in Proverbs which says, a true friend is always loyal. And that's Marg, a true friend, always loyal, and we'll always remember. And have a good laugh, but remember her. Thanks, Vicky.
Thank you so much, Barbara. I've always valued your wisdom, your love, and your sense of humour. I'd just like to read out a text that a friend of Mum's sent me just following Mum's passing. Your mum was easy to love, Vicky. You were very fortunate to have her. Another thing I loved about her was that she was always so grounded. No BS tolerated. I like that. And her capacity for friendship. She always made you feel you were her best friend. In fact, she had a bucket load of them. And you always felt so warm when you turned up at her place. You could tell her anything. Of course, she drew people to herself because she was so accepting and didn't box people. She wasn't afraid to challenge someone if she disagreed. She had a constancy about her, a settledness that comforted others, a maternal manner that just made you feel accepted and understood. She was indeed, Vicky, a woman of love. I thought that really accurately summed Mum up. We're coming to the end of what's turned out to be a very long memorial service, but we're nearly there. Before I conclude the service, I'd like to give you a little glimpse of what our last week with Mum was like. On the Monday, she called us all in and said it was her time, and she had to speak to us all. She was insistent and also a little impatient that Eve and Beth were taking their time to get there. Beth was sitting her full driver's licence and incidentally got it. Within an hour, we were all there. Shane on the phone from Invercargill, Blair and Jenny in Iqaluit, and Levi and Abby in Hamilton. She said her farewells to each of us. It was special, emotional, and a beautiful time. Carol and Garth were with us and prayed with Mum. She'd talked about having a glimpse of where she is going. It was a path and she felt wrapped in peace, and she just wanted it to hurry up and she wanted to hurry up and be there. We really thought this was her time, and we were there to witness it. But no. On the Wednesday, Mum was still with us, and she said to me, "It's time. Call Dad. I'm not waiting for the others. I'm going." So I called Dad and the others, and we all gathered around. This time, Mum also had a further glimpse of where she was going. In the morning, Dad had shared with her the Bible verses about running the race of life and keeping the faith. 1 Corinthians 9:24-27. And she said to us, I'm scared to run the race, which actually isn't surprising because Mum had never run a literal race in her life. We said, we're cheering you on, Mum, and we said you could go at any time, but we couldn't go with you. She held out her arms, just as Di said, and said, I'm coming, Lord. And she just looked so peaceful and full of joy. But a few hours later, she was still with us. Blair said to her, Mum, we thought this was the sprint to the finish, but it's feeling like a marathon. We're still here cheering you on, though. The family left, and I stayed the night with Mum that night. She awoke in the morning and she said to me, because she was lucid every time she came in and out of sleep, and it was difficult for her to speak, but she was really clear sometimes. So this morning she woke up and she said to me, I'm totally confused. And I said, what are you confused about, Mum? She said, I should be dead. Mum got her wish in the early hours of the next morning. Evan and Di were with her. She'd spent the week determined to be with Jesus, and she finally got there in his time. In conclusion, I'd like you to, I'm just going to get Mum's Bible, to read the Psalm 91 that you have in your programs. He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. For He will command His angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. They will lift you up in their hands so that you will not strike your foot against a stone. Mum really felt God protecting her throughout her life. Because He loves me, or because she loves me, says the Lord, I will rescue her. I will protect her, meaning Mum, for she acknowledges my name. She will call upon me and I will answer her. I will be with her in trouble. I will deliver her and honour her. With long life will I satisfy her and show her my salvation. Mum placed her trust in Jesus and let her life be immersed in Him and was guided by His teachings. Mum's faith enhanced who she was and her love for others. I have no doubt that each of you here will have been the subject of her prayers at some point. A strong spiritual heritage is a gift and a legacy that Mum has definitely left us. Just going to pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for Margaret, Maggie, Kiddo, Mum. Just as you touched and transformed her life, she in turn left a deep impact on each of us here. Thank you that we could meet and celebrate her life. We ask that your gentle presence rest on each person here, just as she experienced it throughout her life. In Jesus' name, amen. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make His face shine upon you and be gracious to you and give you peace. The parting song we will walk out to was requested by Mum because she loved dancing to this music with Dad when they were younger. It's an apt reminder of the life, love and joy they shared. Please stand and remain standing as the family leaves first for the dining room at the back of the church. We welcome you to stay to share food and memories with us.